Welcome to the Space Dreamers Podcast, a Su Madre production.
Welcome, Space Dreamers, to episode 6, I believe, but the numbers don't matter today because this is a bonus episode. In this podcast, you may know or you may not know that I'm going through every Arthur C. Clarke novel. And something happened. Oh, yeah. So, episode 4 was about Childhood's End, and there's a mini-series about Childhood's End. So, episode 5 was about the mini-series, not about a book. So, I told Amy and Mallory, I said, we're not doing a book next week, so nobody has to read anything. But we're all going to watch Childhood's End and talk about it. Because I read Childhood's End with Mallory. So we wanted to both watch it and then talk about it. So I was like, no, we don't have to read anything the week of the show. But I was like, I can't take a week off. So I decided to read Expedition to Earth, which is a collection of short stories that came out right after Childhood's End. So it's in the perfect place in terms of chronology. It's just not a novel. It's like 11 short stories, all previously published. I wrote down the dates, but all previously published in like the late 40s, early 50s, and all pretty much about, space science fiction. But I was surprised, actually, Heather, in no Arthur C. Clarke novels does he ever talk about war or like what battling in space would be like. And a lot of these stories are about like battleships, like space battles. Like, wait, did you read Hide and Seek?
No.
No? Okay, that's fine.
No.
All right, so Heather read some of the stories, not all of them. And we also have a movie that we're going to talk about that we both watched, science fiction, over the past week. So Heather, like, what do you want to do? You want to talk about the stories first or the movie first or what?
It doesn't matter. Whatever you want.
All right, let's do... You want to do the movie? Because I'm, like, curious what you think.
Okay, sure.
All right, so we watched Prospect, which came out in 2018, and it stars Pedro Pascal. And do you remember the girl's name?
Sophie Thatcher.
I think it's her first movie, right?
Probably. She hasn't been in anything else.
Okay. Prospect has always been on my radar. I think because of, like, the color aesthetic. Like, when you look at the poster and the movie itself, it has, like, that... It's almost like a reddish-brown, like, color palette. Like, dark, almost like dulled-down greens and, like, a brownish, tannish color through, like, the whole movie. And, like, I just never really seen that color palette in a sci-fi movie. And I was intrigued. And, like, it's like, Prospect, so you assume, like... Because prospecting's, like, an old-timey thing, you know?
Well, it's called a sci-fi western.
That's what it's called?
Well, yeah, that's, like, how they describe it. It's
okay.
how when you, like, look it up, they call it that.
Okay, that's perfect because... My favorite TV show ever probably is Firefly, which the hook for that show is science fiction and a Western mixed.
Oh.
And I got major
right.
Malcolm Reynolds vibes from Pedro Pascal. So, like, Firefly is about, like, a ragtag team of, like, they're, like, not mercenaries, but they're, like, kind of like, they're like smugglers in space. And so they're outlaws, but, like, they're good people. Like, morally, they're good. So that's why they're, like, the main characters of the show. But they're outlaws. So that's kind of the sense I got from Pedro Pascal's character is that, like, he just had, like, Malcolm Reynolds vibes, and who's Nathan Fillion. And clearly, like, an outlaw. Like, no one in the movie's innocent.
Yeah.
I mean, the girl kind of is, but she becomes not, I guess.
That's, like... I mean, that's been done a lot. I feel like that's a story that... Or a character... that happens a lot. Like, he's bad, but he's good. Like, he's bad, but then he kind of becomes good. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's probably maybe like a Western theme, too, because it reminded me of the movie 3:10 to Yuma, where they have, like, a criminal that they have to transport somewhere, but, like... in the end, he is like their friend and he helps them. And like, so, and I'm sure there have been other movies like that. I doubt that's the first one. But yeah, so that's kind of what he was like. Like, he was bad, but then he started to feel bad for the girl and try to protect her.
Yeah, I feel like he was just really just like an opportunist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like let's talk about, did you like
Why don't we just say what the movie is about?
Oh, okay.
Because, like, literally I had never even heard of this movie.
Okay.
So
it's about, you can explain it. Go for it.
I mean, I don't fully feel like I understood exactly what was happening all the time, but the general idea is that this father and daughter go to a planet.
It's a moon, but yeah.
It's a moon. They go to a moon. And they are trying to get, like, a jewel.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Like, they have to dig for, it's like,
it's some kind of, like, valuable mineral that's only found on this moon. And
it's really hard to get. Like, you have to be very, very good at, like, extracting it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which her dad is really good at it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, like, had they been hired to come and like, they say they're, like, harvesting it or something? Like, had they been hired by someone to come and, like, get a big supply of it?
I'm not sure, but it does. It appears that they're there. Like, it seems to me that the planet has been pretty thoroughly stripped already.
Right.
Because he mentions, like, a rush, like an older, like a
Yes.
rush from the past.
Yeah.
And it seems that they're only there because there's some massive deposit that's, like,
Right.
mythical that they've heard about.
Right.
But I in terms of who sent them, I don't really know.
Yeah, because it seemed like they were, like, meeting those people at the end, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But so they so they get to the planet, and there is a scene where, like, they can tell that someone's already been there.
Yeah.
And the dad is like, oh, this is amateur work. Like, let's see if we can find it. So you get that whole scene to see, like, how good he is, I think, at what he does.
Yes.
Because they find a spot and they sort of, pull it out, and he, like, is a real master at, because it's weird. Like, you have to, like, pull it out of this thing.
Yeah.
It comes out in this, like, sack.
Yeah.
And then you have to, like, cut that off and then cut it. And then if you cut it too much, like, stuff from it gets on the jewel thing that you need and, like, ruins it.
Yeah.
So it's very exact, very particular work. So anyway, I think that's what the point of that scene was like, seeing how, like, what a master the dad was.
Yeah.
Because the dad also, like, seems kind of lame.
Dude, I wanted to get that.
Yeah.
I love the scene where he masterfully pulls the jewel out, because up to that point, I feel like your whole feelings towards him are like, this guy's going to get them killed.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like, he's kind of just an asshole.
Yeah.
And like,
and she was like his employee or like his apprentice more than his daughter. Like, he kind of didn't seem to care about her all that much. But then so that whole scene happens, and we can come back to it. And then then these two men find them, or they find the dad, because the girl is, like, still hiding.
Yeah.
So they agree that they're going to go together, I guess, because they also need a ride. Oh, that's the other thing too. Like, they have to get back.
Oh yeah, their ship
to that, like, carrier thing.
Yeah, their landing ship becomes damaged.
Yeah. So they agree that they're going to go together, and then and so the girl is following them to, like, protect her father.
Yes.
And then they get somewhere, and the dad, like, I don't know, like, somehow, like, the tables are turned, and then, like, the daughter and the dad are, like, holding guns on the two guys, one of whom you, like, never even see his face. He's, like, unimportant. And then they find, like, a big stash of the thing. So then the dad's, like, trying to steal it, which I feel like is important because they talk about that later on. And then there's, like, a little shootout, and, like, the dad gets killed and the other guy gets killed. So then that's how the girl and the Pedro Pascal character end up like traveling on the
Yeah.
planet together. And then, you know, that's sort of how the story goes.
And that shootout scene was amazing. Like,
I mean,
how quick it happens.
It did happen really quickly.
But what's so cool about
Yeah.
it is how is Pedro Pascal's just reaction to it. Like, and I just love the aesthetics in that movie about how the spacesuits are not well fitting at all.
Yeah.
The kind of situation where, like, if you turn your head, like the side of the spacesuit where there's no glass, like, kind of cut off half their face.
Yeah, I
it's
did
like
notice
when you're wearing
that.
a hood and you have
Yeah.
to turn your shoulders.
And
to
his
see.
was like almost creepy looking from the back because it had all those like spots to like plug things in.
Oh yeah.
So it looked a little creepy, and I think it was like her point of view of it was like I don't know, like maybe it was supposed to be just like a little bit creepy. But yeah, the suits they looked old.
Yeah, I liked that. I mean, I think like run down, like futuristic things that are broken down and run down, it's like a little bit played out, but it's still pretty effective. Like
Yeah.
I really liked when how all they need to breathe is like a filter.
Oh yeah.
They don't necessarily need oxygen, and how he just drops the line of like, you have the good air filter.
Right.
Like that they probably only have 2 air filters and one's kind of shitty.
Right. And then did they, why were they connected? Like, why were they connected by that tube? Was it something to do with the filter?
Maybe.
Because like that would suck. Because remember, like at one point they're like walking and they go on either side of like a tree.
Yeah.
And so they get caught. I mean, and that's the thing. So then she goes back to the ship after the little shootout happens, and she goes back to the ship, and then like oh, well, I don't know. Does she try to leave and she can't? I don't remember. But then like the Pedro Pascal character comes on the ship. She shoots him, which ends up being like a major problem.
Oh yeah, dude, that scene was pretty. Like the whole movie, it's like I don't know how you felt, but I felt pretty early on when you realize it's just her and Ezra, I think is his name.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I couldn't remember what his name was.
I personally thought early on, I was like, listen, girl, like, just do what he's telling you to do. Like, like I understand that she's not going to trust him. Like, I get it. But and he is clearly just trying to convey to her, like, you need to trust me. Like, put the gun down. Like, I get that you don't trust me, and that, like, I got in a little situation with your dad, but, like, now it's just you and me.
Right.
And I felt a little frustrated. Like, I didn't think it was bad, but I was a little frustrated by her not trusting him. Like, I just wanted to move on with, like...
Well, yeah, and I was like, you're not going to go... I don't know how far they had to go, but I was like, you're not going to walk all this way with a gun pointed at this guy. Like, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And I think, like, when they're in her ship and he says to her, like, you know, she's like, you killed my dad or something. And he's like, well, yeah, I did. But also, like, he was trying to steal my stuff. So I feel like it's kind of like him saying, nobody is really innocent in this. And maybe it's that it's like a kill or be killed kind of a situation.
I mean,
you know.
Yeah, it's like, I think you can just draw parallels to, like, the Untamed West when people, like, basically you take your life in your own hands to go sifting for gold.
Right.
Like, you know that people are also out there trying to get gold.
Right.
And there's really no laws because, like, the United States is only established on the eastern part of the country. You know what I mean at that point? But, like, I really liked the shootout. And then I feel like that movie, like, I'm probably never gonna watch it again. But I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. Yeah,
I mean, I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. I had never heard of it. I'd never, you know, I mean, I had never seen it on Netflix because Netflix wants you to watch what they want you to watch.
Yeah. It's not a Netflix film, so.
Oh, it's not?
No. I'm just saying, so they probably would push their Netflix content on you.
Yeah, because then, like, when it was over and it gives you, like, suggestions, I was like, what do these have to do with this movie that I just watched? You're only showing me what you want me to watch.
Right.
But that's beside the point. So, yeah, I never had heard of it. And, like, if it was 2018, I mean, Pedro Pascal was not, I'm sure he was not really as well known.
Right.
Back then. And he's really the only famous, there's not that many people in the movie.
True.
And I felt like the dad, who is one of the Duplass brothers, like Mark and Jay Duplass, was kind of a bad actor. Like, I felt like he was just like, his lines, he was delivering them like very robotically. Like maybe that was part of the character.
Well, I think, okay, so that whole situation eventually grew on me, but in the beginning, I agree with you. Like when I was like, before they get on the planet, when it's just her and the dad.
Yeah.
I was like, I get what he's going for. Like, I get what they're going for. They're going for like, she's concerned, and you're supposed to identify with her and being concerned about the fact that if you miss your slingshot opportunity, then you're stranded there and you're going to die. But he's supposed to be the opposite of like, look, like this is just what I do. Like, it's dangerous, and it just felt a little bit like it was forced from the actor.
Yeah,
I think other actors, I've just seen that situation feel a little bit more believable in other movies.
Right.
Whereas maybe you're right, it did feel a little forced when he's just so nonchalant about the fact that she keeps pointing out, like, hey dude, if we don't come back here by this time, we're stranded out here in space.
Well, and then also just like when they find the first thing that they find, and she's like, okay, how much is this going to get us? So that would be enough. I don't know what they need. I feel like there's something they needed the money for, but like, or whatever. Maybe it's not money. But, and he's like, no, like, let's just like go do what we want to do. But she was thinking a little bit more like, okay, so we happened upon this site. We found this piece of jewel or whatever it is. It will get us enough money for like what we need. So why don't we just go back? And he's like, no, let's, so if he had listened to her, he would still be alive, like, so that was, I guess, kind of interesting too. But yeah, her whole thing is like, she's really nervous about getting stranded there. But then that was weird because people obviously do live there, because then they go to those people. But
dude, there's also like that undeniable. And Pedro Pascal acknowledges it. Remember when she comes out for the first time with a gun? I forget what the exact line is, but he's like, I never seen a little girl here before.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
and when they go find those people, they're like,
they want her.
Well, let's buy that little girl, that girl, which is
like,
creepy.
Yeah,
that
like
was
there's
creepy.
that undeniable, like, okay, if you're like a seasoned professional and you end up being stuck on this planet, you could probably get by. But if you're this little girl,
right,
like, you're going to be a victim of something horrible. Because the only people who are there are outlaws.
Right.
I would assume.
Right.
Because you're going to die from the elements because it's an alien planet, or someone's going to do something like kill you or something worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and like at one point he does say that. He's like, you're going to need, I forget what they're talking about, but he says something like, you're going to need something to trade or they'll just take something from you. Yeah. Which I think very much means not like take a material item from you, but I would, well, and when the people want, when those creepy people want to buy her, it's like, it's awful. It's like, it was like for breeding purposes, I think. Like literally, like they were like, we don't have any more people left, and we've got our dead mother like laying over in this part of this little tent that we're in. So we're gonna need you to like just keep our people going. Like, wait, not good.
I didn't love the scenes with those people. Like I almost, but there are no natives on this planet, right? Like native humans, right?
Well, no, probably not. They probably just ended up there.
But every human, so like every human they encounter is like they came there.
I mean, probably.
Right?
I would imagine, because none of them, because like if you were native, it seems like you would be able to breathe there, and none of those people. Although I did think it was weird that like they were just in like a little tent.
I did.
And
I was like, is
they
that
weren't
tent?
wearing their helmets.
Yeah, I was like, is that tent pressurized? Like,
yeah, and like a couple times that happens because when they end up in the tent, when it's just the two of them, when it's just her and Oh, well, yeah, it's when the movie turns into 127 hours and we cut off an arm.
Yeah. I do remember that.
I was like, oh boy. But I thought that scene was kind of cool because it showed how like calm she is. And he's just like, how are you this calm? And she's like, oh, I've had to do really terrible things. Like, I think it just showed you that she, like I said before, her dad treated her less like a daughter and more like a tool in his profession, in his trade, or like I said, like an apprentice, like an employee who's learning. And then when she talks about like that book that she really liked to read, and her dad was like, oh, you shouldn't read this. You should be spending more time like getting better at at what you do. Yeah. Like she really didn't get to be a kid. I don't know. How old was she supposed to be? Like fairly young, I guess.
Like 12 or something, 13.
Yeah.
Under 15, I would
guess. Like she was supposed to be pretty young. I thought she did a good job. Like I thought that girl did a good job.
Yeah.
And then at the end when they meet, like the movie was better when it was just the two of them, I feel like.
I agree.
Like at the end when they go, like that was so weird. That guy that was in that like glass box and they were like, oh, we just brought him out here to die. Yeah. And I was like, what? Like who sent him out? I mean,
I agree.
There were a lot of little things in the movie that I just had to like just accept the fact that I didn't get what was going on.
I agree. I think the first half was a lot better. I think, honestly, I was unsure of it up until the scene where they extract the first jewel.
Yeah.
Like that whole scene with like almost no dialogue, and it's like the practical effects were so good.
Yeah.
And like when he was reaching his hand in to the like fleshy looking root, I was like, I was just hypnotized. I was like, what is he going to pull out of there? Like,
well, I feel
what is going on here?
Yeah, at that moment, I was like, what kind of a movie is this? Is his hand going to get like bitten off or something?
There's a little teeny tiny part of me. Like I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I was like, I really want to see an alien.
Oh.
But you just... Yeah. I'm not faulting the movie for that. I wanted to see something living.
Well, but I guess like maybe those things were living. I don't know. They seemed kind of.
Do they ever talk? Like, what is that? Do they ever say?
I do not know. It looked like amber or something. Yeah. Like it looked like, I don't know. It was weird though. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole. It really truly is just like a Western that happens to take place like in space. When did the movie take place? Do we know?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I guess what I was going to say, I thought that scene was excellent where they extract the thing for the first time. I thought the standoff scene was amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought the arm cutting off scene was amazing. And everything between those two characters, like Pedro Pascal and the girl, were great. But I agree. I think once they meet other people, and then you introduce the whole idea of like that they want to like buy the girl.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad, but I wasn't as into it when all that stuff started to happen.
Right.
It kind of became sort of like predictable. Whereas the beginning's like you never seen a movie like this. I feel like, but then by the end, you're like, okay, like we're gonna let's save the day.
Like it was kind of funny. I feel like at the end when like he dug up the two things and like messed them both up.
Dude, I was gonna say that too. Yeah.
And then like she's like, okay, let me try. And you're like, okay, this girl's gonna do it.
Yeah.
She learned from her dad, who's super good. And then she also screws it up. And the guy's like, you guys don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man. But then and then that was weird at the end too, like how that woman would just like play that really loud music. Was it so that she could talk about them without them hearing?
Dude, I was so confused by that.
Yeah.
That
was weird.
That was one of the things that I just abandoned. I was just like, I don't understand why that's happening, so I'm just not even going to try to figure it out.
Yeah, and then I thought it was cool at the end. I mean, again, like sort of predictable that like, you know, when he got stabbed, like, and then he's like, okay, go, you can make it. And she ran away, but she was actually just like going to get stuff to bring back. You know, because I was like, she's not going to leave him. Like that doesn't seem...
It's funny,
like it would happen.
It's funny doing this podcast and like constantly consuming science fiction because you just start to notice things that are in multiple stories. Like I watched Lockout. Have you ever heard of Lockout?
No.
It came out in 2014. It stars Guy Pearce. It's on Netflix. It's it's like they don't really ever show Earth, so you don't know quite how futuristic it is, but it's about a prison that orbits. It's like a orbiting prison. It's like you stick prisoners in in space.
Yeah.
Like a spaceship. And the president's daughter there, and she gets kidnapped, and so Guy Pearce has to go in and save her. And so he saves her, and then he's like, there's one escape pod, and he's like, I'm gonna save you, so get in the escape pod. And she's like, well, what about you? He's like, I'll figure it out, don't worry about me. So he sticks her in there, shuts the door, and the camera kind of moves over, and you see it through a window. You see the pod jettison, but you don't ever see like the door shut. So then like the next shot, she's like right there. She's like, I wasn't gonna leave you. So it's kind of the same thing.
Well, yeah, and it's like I said, it's like earlier when I said it was like the movie 3:10 to Yuma. I mean, it's like literally like at the end, it's like, you know,
same ending.
Well, yeah, and it's like it's deciding like, oh, what we've been through a lot over these past few days or however long, you know, they were walking around.
So maybe that's why I just wanted to trust him. Because it was like, dude, obviously you guys are going to be buddies by the end of this movie, so can we just get on with the trusting? Because I like the two of you, so I just want to see you work together.
Yeah. And the scene, and the arm cutting off scene was kind of cool because, like, they almost got to, like, swap places. I mean, not that it's not, like, very brave of someone to be like, cut my arm off. Which
he's
also, though, like,
time.
I didn't really get that. Like, so she shot him, and then he put stuff on it, but what happened? Did it get infected?
I think just what he did didn't work.
Okay.
It appears that humans are in space in this movie, in this future, but nothing works. Like, it's amazing they've gotten as far as they have, because everything's shitty.
But it's also interesting that, like, there was a special tool... Specifically, it sounded like for cutting off limbs.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, these are the speeds for flesh. Yep. This is the one for bone. Yeah. It's like, what? Okay, how often are people like losing limbs that you need to specifically? Someone was like, we got to make a tool for this. Right? But it was cool how like he was all freaked out, and then she was like super calm about it. Yeah. And I feel like that might have been a kind of a long like take
I'm pretty
of
sure,
her cutting it off. I thought about it afterwards. I was like, I should go see how long it is, but that was kind of cool.
I watched that movie when it was late. I was pretty tired, so my brain maybe wasn't working on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize she was going to cut his arm off until she was doing it.
Oh.
Like when he was explaining about the knife, and when I heard him say it cut through bone, I'm like, why is she going to cut through bone?
Yeah.
And then she starts doing it. I was like, oh, she's cutting it off.
Right.
She's not just like removing a bullet or something.
No, yeah.
Because that's what I thought. I figured she would like remove the bullet. And then while she's doing it, I was like, she's taking the whole thing.
We're losing an arm here. Yeah. And then he recovered pretty quickly because they were just like, all right, gotta go. Like, leave your arm here. I don't know what they did with the arm.
Yeah, that was disturbing.
And then he just didn't have an arm. And that's what I was thinking when they made it to the place at the end and they were digging. I was like, he's got to do this without an arm.
He's at a serious disadvantage.
Yeah. Also, it seems like he's just not that good at it anyway. Right? So, like, then minus an arm.
Yeah.
You know.
I think the last thing I'll say is I really liked how the dad was so good at that.
Yeah.
Because he has pretty much zero redeemable characteristics.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, he's like, there's a reason he is necessary or like valuable in this situation.
Right.
Because in the beginning, I just kept thinking like this guy is going to get both of them killed.
Right.
It just seemed
like he had no business having a kid either.
Yeah,
he was just not a good dad. And then it was really cool that he was really good at like what he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the movie was like interesting. Like I did feel like there were some cool practical things, like those like things that I think it was their food. Like they they had little packs.
Yeah.
And like that was how they ate. It looked like a little straw came up in there. So there were other cool like practical things in the movie too that I thought were
neat. I thought the practical effects like overall were really good.
And like that thing that their like spaceship was on.
Yeah.
In the beginning, was it just something that like transported like your little spaceships to where you need to go. Like that was kind of cool too.
She called it a freighter.
Oh yeah.
So I would assume that thing. So basically, like the ship that you own probably isn't able to do interstellar travel.
Right.
So you have to like hitch a ride with this giant thing. It's almost like a yacht club.
Right.
Like
There was some cool,
like
or like a ferry. Yeah. So I thought the movie did have some cool, like practical, like things that actually make sense.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of science fiction movies, like you can just do whatever you want because it's science fiction.
Right.
And like, I thought that was one cool thing about this movie. Like there were little things that actually made sense.
And that's like one of the reasons it attracted me as a movie we could watch for this podcast, is because Arthur C. Clarke is all about hard science fiction, and that's pretty much this movie was like borderline. It was more like Western, but it was definitely like kind of a hard sci-fi.
Yeah, but it's cool to take, you know, genres and mix them. Like, okay, this is a Western, but we're going to put it in a science fiction setting.
Yeah, and
like that's cool.
That is the hardest thing about attempting to sell the show Firefly, is because when you describe it, like it's a Western in space.
Yeah.
Like that's initially I had no interest in that show, because if you say a Western in space, I don't think that sounds appealing at all, because I don't like Westerns, but I like space.
Yeah.
But then finally I watched Firefly and it's like amazing. You know what I mean? So.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like the unappealing part of that is more Western.
I agree.
Than space. But why not? I mean, why not? Like you can literally take a Western story and just put it on a moon or a planet or whatever.
It works, I think.
Yeah.
So overall, I mean, it's on Netflix. If you have Netflix and you like sci-fi, I would definitely suggest watching it. It's not like an action movie, but it's like tense.
Yeah.
It's intense. It has really like good performances and just an interesting setting.
I mean, and like we said, there's not really that many people in it.
Yeah.
But the girl's really good, and Pedro Pascal is really good.
And like I had texted you, like I'm aware of Pedro Pascal because I'm pretty sure like people are fans of him, and this is the first thing I've ever watched with him, and he is great. Yeah,
no, he is, and it's nice to watch a movie with him where you can like see him instead of just hearing him, because obviously in The Mandalorian, you don't see his face. So,
do we know anything about him as a human? Is he American?
No, I think he's from Chile.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure.
Chile. Okay.
Yeah. But he's good. Cool. I mean, he's good. And then obviously, like I said to you too, he's a great character from Game of Thrones and has a pretty like iconic death on that show too. So.
Wait, so have you ever heard him speak without doing like an accent?
What do you mean?
Because doesn't he have kind of like a southern twang in Prospect? I'm just curious what he sounds like.
Yeah, you know what
English.
is another movie that I just remembered that he's in? The second
Wonder Woman.
No, well, yes, he is in that. That movie's not that good. The movie's actually not good at all.
It's okay.
The second Kingsman movie.
Okay.
And in that he plays a southern, like kind of a cowboy.
Yeah.
So
I'm just curious because I would assume if you're from Chile, you have like an accent, and to be able to do an American accent is extremely impressive. But then to do that southern twang, like I totally bought his accent.
Well, yeah, and that's why when you said that, it made me remember that he's like had that kind of an accent before. He has also like a very recognizable voice, but maybe that's just because of The Mandalorian, where you that's all you have is just like his voice,
right?
But yeah, I think he does have a little bit of an accent normally.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of what he sounds like, what he sounded like in Game of Thrones, but I can't remember. I don't know. I mean, Mandalorian's kind of westerny too.
True.
Like he plays a good.
Oh yeah.
He plays a good not that he's a cowboy in that
like
show, but you know, like he's good at that role.
Well, I'm officially a fan of his after watching Prospect.
Oh, look at that.
So if you're a fan, you'll be more of a fan. Maybe.
Yeah, no, he's good. And he's the only like recognizable person in the movie, but he's not like distractingly recognizable.
Yeah.
Like he
Dude,
plays a good character.
What did you? What's that little blonde piece of hair he had? Did you notice that?
No, I
You
didn't.
didn't notice that?
No.
He had like, it was on like the top left part of his forehead. It was like a little tuft of like looked like bleached blonde hair.
Oh, maybe
I was like, that's
he
just
was
like a
trying
futuristic hairstyle.
a new look.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't even remember noticing that.
Maybe I'll try to grab like a screenshot or something
Yeah.
and send it to you.
I don't know. That's funny.
Yeah,
I
but
didn't notice that.
so okay, let's do the book next. But first, I want you to rank for me
What?
Midnight Sky, Solaris, and Prospect.
Yeah, but how am I ranking them? Just in
Just
terms of like an actual like
what-
watching the
yeah.
movie and enjoying it, or oh gosh. I mean, I think I'd have to say Solaris would be like at the bottom.
Okay, figured.
But again, I'm just talking about like an enjoyable movie watching experience.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, Midnight Sky and Prospect are kind of like right there together. Prospect had more like moments of like tension for me, like of just being like, oh, what's going to happen? Or, you know, Midnight Sky had like a little more going on. Like there were, you know, people up on a spaceship and people down on Earth. And, but I will say too, like Prospect, even though it was kind of predictable, like kept me very interested the whole time. Because you kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, I do, you know, I feel like we've both kind of said that. Like we sort of knew what was going to happen in this movie, but it still kept me interested. So, I don't know, maybe Prospect, then the Midnight Sky.
Yeah. Well, I think just Prospect, the edge Prospect has, in my opinion, and I think this is important when it comes to movies, is that it's a lot shorter.
Yeah, it is. It is like a short. It's a pretty short movie.
It's like 90-something minutes long, whereas the Midnight Sky, I know, is like just over 2 hours. So, I mean, if that matters, you know, like sometimes a sci-fi concept can be cool, but it doesn't necessarily like hold your attention. Like after a while, it's not cool anymore. So if you only have to spend 90 minutes with a concept that you only like kind of like, then it's just more, I guess, digestible.
You know what's interesting though is now I'm thinking about like the similarities between the Midnight Sky. It's like a guy, like a man and a young girl, like going on
a
little journey,
and put together unwillingly by both.
So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I mean, I guess the similarities kind of stop there.
I would love to see a crossover of like George Clooney having to travel with Pedro Pascal. How cool would that be? Like, how would they interact? Because George Clooney would be the brains.
Yeah.
And Pedro's character would be the brawn.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Or maybe you'd find out that, like, somebody wasn't real. Like in the Midnight Sky.
Maybe George Clooney's not real.
Who
knows?
Yeah.
It's like a dream within a dream. Inception. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the book.
Okay.
Okay, so, like, let's just start with whatever story you liked the best.
Whatever story I liked the best.
Or you have, like, the most to say about.
Well, I mean, one of them that I read was obviously a lot longer than the other ones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can start with that one if you want. Breaking Strain.
Real quick, is this the first thing you've ever read by Arthur C. Clarke?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's your just initial impression?
Well, so it's hard because for me, like, I'm definitely more of like a novel person. So short stories are fine.
I agree with you. I agree.
But I think for me, like, short stories, I kind of feel one of two ways. Like, either they're good and I like it that they're just like this little snippet and they're, you know, you kind of get everything and then it's over and you can, you know, move on to the next one. Or I feel like they're just short enough that I'm like, wait, what? You know, like I sort of like, it's not enough for me to get into it. So by the time it's over, I'm like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
So in that sense, like, I guess I'd have to read a novel, like an Arthur C. Clarke novel, to really truly say how I feel about him and his writing.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely like. So I guess Breaking Strange, since it was the longest one that we read, I had a little bit of a hard time like keeping track of the two characters.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, in a way that's kind of on purpose. Sorry, I just kind of jumped right into this first story here.
That's all right.
But I feel like because you have the two characters and then it's very much, and it's not told from one of their point of views, but it's definitely like more like, you know, towards one of them, I think. And then there's a very like clear thing that's like happening, but then it kind of like switches. And so towards the end of it, I was like, which guy is which?
Yeah.
Like I was a little bit confused about, but I think that that's part of it, because then you kind of, I mean, I guess I should say like what the story's about and everything. So Breaking Strain. So it's about these two, one of them is an engineer, and I don't know what the other one was supposed to be.
I think he's just a pilot.
Just a pilot. Okay. So there is McNeil is the engineer, and then Grant, we think, is like the pilot. And so they're on the ship. What was it called? The Star Queen?
Yes.
And it's a cargo ship? Okay. So it's bringing...
So it's just the two of them.
Yes.
That's
and
important.
I thought it was interesting. So anyway, so what happens is they get hit by an asteroid, I guess, which...
meteoroid.
A meteoroid. And it's... They describe it. It's like really small, but it's like by meteoroid standards, it's like pretty big and like does some damage.
Yeah.
So it hits a part of the ship, and so the big problem that it causes, they're only 3 weeks, I think, away from their destination.
Yeah, it's either Mercury or Venus. It's one of the inner planets.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It might be Venus. I think it's Venus because they talk to Venus at a certain point.
Yeah, you're right.
So they are only 3 weeks away from their destination. It's Venus. And the big problem with the meteoroid is that they're losing oxygen.
Yep.
So, and also, side note, you know how I just recently watched Sunshine?
Yes.
So that's like one of the big problems in that movie.
Yeah, it's a conflict that's used, I feel like, pretty often in space movies.
Yeah, and it sort of ends up like they have the same issue that they do in this story, which is, so anyway, they're losing oxygen. There's two men.
Yep.
There's not enough oxygen to get two men to their destination. There's only enough oxygen to get one.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happens among other things in
Right.
Sunshine. But there's not enough oxygen to get all of the crew where they need to go.
I'm pretty sure it says they would run out 10 days.
10
prior
days,
to arrival.
yeah. So the big conflict is which of them is going to live,
right,
and which of them is going to die.
Yeah.
And again, same thing. That's like the same conflict and maybe, and like you said, maybe this is something in a lot of sci-fi, but it's like the same conflict in that movie Sunshine is like they have to decide who is gonna die, basically.
Yeah, it's like who is most important to the mission is who,
right.
is who should live.
Right. And like, so, but then it's also kind of about like, so you're getting the story more from Grant's perspective, and like McNeil in the beginning kind of like loses it a little bit. He starts crying and like kind of breaks
drinking.
down. Yeah. When he finds out that, they've had this
Issue.
Thing. And so Grant just like really like looks down on him.
Oh yeah.
And so he is like, okay, we've got to talk about this. And then I think it's interesting because there's a part where they say that, and I don't know if this is true or like if this is even a thing, but it kind of makes sense that there should never be less than 3 people on a space ship or whatever.
That, and it's interesting because that is how many people went to the moon every time we went to the moon.
Well, so I feel like it's for good reason. Like these men just like are like they're kind of at each other.
They're like opposites.
Yeah, and like at one point he says they have fundamental differences in temperament. Like they're obviously just like very different.
Yeah.
So you're more like focusing on Grant in the beginning of the story. Grant has a wife, He has kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, but he also kind of acts like they don't even really like him that much. So
true.
he is kind of like, I should be the one to live because McNeil doesn't have a family. Who cares?
And like,
who
not
cares?
only that, wait, okay, I'm just thinking of this, but I wonder if, is it in the story that like it matters that Grant's the pilot? Because wouldn't that matter if you like have to land the ship?
Yeah, but I don't know because I don't think that I don't think he has to land the ship. And also, like, I couldn't even figure out what Grant was. Like, I didn't really know what he was.
Yeah, never mind.
But at the end, the ship goes to them. Like, they don't really have to do much.
Yes.
It's like they have like don't they call them like tugs or something? It's almost like tugboats.
Yeah,
like,
like
go up and get the ship and bring it to where it needs to go. So anyway, like, they're kind of just like living their lives. Like, it sounds like they're not even really talking to each other. And then Grant is like, okay, so we're going to have to talk about this. He like writes a letter to McNeil, I think.
Yeah.
But then there's one day where he finds McNeil smoking.
Yeah.
And so that just like kind of sends him over the edge. And he's like, all right, that's it. Like, this guy needs to die. So I'm going to poison him.
Mm-hmm.
So he poisons him.
Yeah.
So it's cool because the way that the story is, like, they have dinner and he poisons him and like Grant's like, oh man, I made the drink too hot. Like, this stinks. Like, let's just get this over with. So then the next scene is like a body leaving the ship with like a little jetpack or something so that it won't be pulled back in to the ship. So you obviously assume that it's McNeil because you just saw Grant poison him.
Yes. But that scene, it's like is narrated from the outside, right? It's almost like you're watching it.
Yes.
From the outside.
Yes.
Okay.
And you don't know. So I don't think it doesn't say like McNeil went out. You just assume that it's him. But then the next scene, and this is where I really was like, wait, what? It's like the tug ship is going to get them. And then McNeil gets off the ship. So you're like, wait, what? So then it goes back.
Yep.
And it explains everything that McNeil knew Grant was going to try to poison him. He's like, you make a really bad criminal. Like, I've known you were going to try to kill me. Yeah. But then this is where I got a little confused because what did they do? They played cards to see who would. So they like talk about it. Like, he's like, okay, McNeil's like, we need to figure this out. But then I was a little confused on exactly what they did. Did they play cards and like whoever lost at cards was the one that died?
It did seem like it was either, I don't know if they were playing cards. I think they might have been drawing a card.
Okay.
Like if you draw a specific, like maybe like whoever draws the higher card is the one who gets killed or whatever. And
then they also, correct me if I'm wrong about this, they talked to like, I don't know, the people on Venus or something. They explained what they were doing so that nobody would get blamed for anything.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, hey,
so
somebody here needs to die.
Yeah.
And we're telling you, we're both saying that we are agreeing to this.
Yeah.
So it was like sort of a lot to unpack. And I feel like you kind of, like, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like, this is awful. But then I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
So it was.
So Grant willingly poisoned himself?
I guess so. I mean, you don't actually get to see that. But then you kind of think to yourself, like, because Grant tried to kill McNeil, then, like, maybe he's the one that should have died anyway.
Yeah.
Because he's the one that, like, tried to murder the other guy.
I hopefully this is the story that I remember detecting. It's one of those stories where, like, the main character, like, Grant is so in his head about what he thinks about McNeil.
Right.
And never talks to McNeil about it.
Right.
So it's almost like he's even though he's not the narrator, it's kind of told through his point.
Exactly.
It's kind of like an what's the word? It's a untrustworthy narrator,
right?
Because it almost seems like McNeil is only characterized in the story through Grant's eyes.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that Grant's view of McNeil is a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
and
in
because
turn,
they're so different.
Yeah, because in turn, as the reader, your view is going to be skewed because you're only seeing McNeil through Grant's point of view.
Right.
And Grant kind of despises the dude.
Yeah, and I feel like, and then the whole thing with like not having 3 people on the ship, like they talk about that. I thought it was kind of cool that like, I don't remember why there wasn't a third guy. Something happened.
Well, I don't remember either.
But then it all comes down to money because they're like, if the ship didn't sail, whatever. I don't know, what's the word?
So you can sail on the stars.
Okay. So if the ship doesn't leave on time, it won't leave at all.
Okay.
And since there was a ton of money sunk into it, it's got to go.
Yeah.
But protocol was not followed. The ship was also, it was interesting. Like I wrote down here that the cargo on the ship was either blatant luxury or sheer necessity.
What do you mean? It was
kind of cool. Like that's like a quote from the story. What they were bringing was either absolutely ridiculous,
right,
or you just needed to have it.
Essential, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought
that was kind of cool.
Doesn't McNeil get the booze and the cigarettes from the cargo?
Yeah, he does.
I would assume it must be luxury then. It must be booze and cigarettes.
No, I think it's a mixture.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what that's what they say. Like when they describe what's on it. Remember there's like a book? There's like a book, and he's like, how is this book worth so much money?
Yeah.
So that there's a mixture of it on there. It's either.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of cool. Like, I just thought it was an interesting, like, description. Because I was like, okay, this is a cargo ship. Like, what's on it? And then it's like, oh, it's either something you absolutely need or something that is, like, just exorbitant, like, ridiculous. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, he does. He breaks into the.
What is your impression of 3 people being necessary? Like, why do you think that is?
Well, because I think that just 2 people can kind of like get at each other. I think that this story is a perfect example of why, or like, since I already compared it to Sunshine, like in that movie, they're trying to decide who's going to die because of the oxygen thing. And then I don't remember how, but they decide who it's going to be. And then like one of the guys is like, okay, I'll do it. I'll be the one that goes and kills him. Like, I think that you need but then the guy kills himself, so he doesn't end up having to do it. But it's like, you just need more people to have like more perspectives and like someone to say, okay, no, like that's a rash decision. Because if there had been 3 of them, they would have, I'm sure, who knows, this isn't real, but like, I'm sure that they would have sat down and said, okay, look, I guess there would have been 2 that had to die, but like, we need to talk this out. Like, you're a lot more likely to have a conversation if there's 3 people or more than 2. And you're a lot more likely to have like someone, like you might be very set in like, this is what I think, but you're a lot more likely to have someone go, but what about this?
Yeah. I think it also comes down to something as simple as, and you were just describing it, but like something even as simple and literal as a vote.
Right, exactly.
Like you can't vote if there's 2 people and you have, then you need like a person to decide, like to be the vote. What's that? The tiebreaker, or
right, yeah.
Be like the deciding vote.
And then don't they talk about too, like in this story, like when they get hit by the meteoroid, it's like a crazy, like 1 in a million chance. So like that is just interesting too. It's kind of like just the fact that there weren't 3 people on the ship, and then the fact that this like crazy thing. And I do feel like that is a lot of I think that happens in a lot of stories anyway. But it's just like you kind of get to say, like in maybe sci-fi movies or something, you kind of get to say like, oh, well, like if this crazy thing hadn't happened, and then if this crazy thing hadn't happened, like, you know, it's just kind of, it's like the odds of it are very
dude,
unlikely.
you can even apply that to Prospect. Like, and you kind of skipped over it, and I didn't want to interrupt you because you were given a good description. And so I'm just curious, like, the first hole that they come across, right? That the first thing he pulls out, remember?
Yeah.
Aren't you supposed to? Isn't the idea that Pedro Pascal and his buddy had just been there, and they left, and then they came back, and I'm pretty sure they were there. They left for a short amount of time, and then they came back to continue what they were doing. And I think the idea is that the two of them stumbled upon it just in that moment when they weren't there,
right?
So it's almost like,
and he did say this is amateur work, and we do get to see later on
that he's an amateur.
That Pedro Pascal's not good, and maybe his buddy was better at it because they did have a bunch of the jewels.
True.
When he tries to steal it from him,
but
whatever those things are.
And then if you like take it even further, it's like if she had not shot him, he would still have an arm, and then or if she had. Like, it's so crazy. Like, you know, in movies, people are always just throwing guns around like it's no big deal.
Right.
And like people, like if someone gets shot, it's always like in the arm. So they're fine for the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? But it's almost like if she had not missed. Or do you think she was trying to kill him and she just missed?
I don't know. I mean, what if she had been there when they stumbled upon them?
True.
Like, who knows what would have happened, because they never would have had the advantage. Because they didn't know, Pedro Pascal and his guy didn't know that she was there.
Exactly. Because there's that moment where he whispers to her and to explain, like, look, okay, we're going to go here and I need you to do this. Do that scene. I loved the standoff scene. Especially, it was in the trailers, I think, and maybe it's like an image I've seen on the internet of just that shot when she first comes out and she's holding that super long gun. Yeah. And she just looks so awkward. Because she's like a kid. Because
she's little.
And her loose-fitting space
suit.
Yeah, and you're just like, really oh, dude, this girl is in over her head.
Yeah.
And I thought that scene was so cool, too, because she fires one shot.
Right.
And then she goes to reload and realizes she can't. And then he's like, oh, this is my opportunity.
Yeah.
He jumps up with the gun. I love that whole scene.
Well, and also something interesting about that scene is that once it's over, Pedro Pascal goes back and shoots the dad again.
Yeah, that was...
So you're kind of like, ooh.
But wait, hold on.
What?
She does say, you killed my dad, but did he kill her dad? No, the other guy
Well, but I mean, who knows? He made sure he was dead.
Yeah.
And he even says, he's like, well, technically, yes.
Yeah.
But he's also saying, I was acting in self-defense, which he was. You have to know in that situation that, it's like we said, kill or be killed. Exactly. I mean, that's really kind of what it is.
I agree.
So...
okay, honestly, there's one more thing I actually want to talk to you about, Breaking Strain.
Okay.
But if you want, dude, we could almost we don't have to go into super detail with the rest.
Okay.
I really liked what we just talked about.
Well, I mean, I feel like I talked more, so.
No, I liked
Sorry.
it. I thought it was good. We almost we don't have to even talk about the other ones, unless there was one you loved that you wanted to mention.
No, well, the other ones that I read were kind of cool. To be honest with you about Breaking Strain, if I were not reading this, I read that story very much like I used to read for school. Okay. I was really okay, what's going on here? Right. I really kind of had to pay attention, which is fine.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably not how I would have read it had I not been doing it for this. But I think that's good because then I got more out of it. And to be honest with you, I very much thought that McNeil died.
Yeah.
So I literally wrote notes about that and then I was like, oh, that didn't actually happen.
I like it.
Yeah. So that was another thing that kind of caused me to go back. And then I literally was writing things down about the two men because I was I'm a little confused about who's who here.
I was only able to keep track of them because it seemed very much like they were opposites. You know what I mean?
Yes, they were. But then there were certain things an example is when they were talking about making food. Like it was like, I think they said like McNeil liked to make these
Big
nice meals.
Right.
And Grant was just like, meh, whatever.
Yeah.
And to me, that seemed a little unlike the way that the characters have been described. So there were moments where I would be like, wait, who are we talking about again?
Yeah.
But the other stories that I read, so one that I was like I didn't fully understand. So maybe if you remember it, is Inheritance. So that's the one where the guy, his name is David, and he goes on like a mission or whatever, but he falls back down to Earth.
Yeah.
I think. But like then he starts talking about a dream that he has that he had where it was like him and two guys. I could be totally like not getting this correct. So I'll just tell you like kind of what I got from it. And then there were a couple things I didn't understand. So he has this dream where there's like him and two other men in a spaceship, I believe. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't end well.
Okay.
So he goes on all these like dangerous, he's like a test pilot. So he goes on all these dangerous missions, or maybe they're not called missions, these flights. And he has two men that work with him, Jimmy, and I don't remember who the other one is. So they kind of at one point say to him, like, where do you get all your confidence from? And he tells them about this dream.
Right.
And he also talks about two other men who had similar situations where they had a dream and basically the dream happened. So they had like a premonition. Yeah. But the cool thing about David's dream and the idea of this being a premonition is, because I think this is just an interesting concept anyway, is that in his mind, that's when he's going to die. And again, if I totally misread this story,
it's funny. I want you to finish and then I'll tell you what I wrote.
Just let me know.
Story.
So basically what I took from it is that he, in his mind, because these other two men had similar situations, he feels perfectly safe until he's in that situation. So I see what you're getting at.
So
he is like, I can go do this mission. I can do this test flight. I can do this because I know that I'm going to live. Oof. But until I'm in the setting in my dream with two other men, which that part was a little confusing to me because he said that one of them looked like one of the guys that he worked with, Jimmy, I think. So he's like, until I'm in that situation, I know that I'm safe. I'm not going to die.
That's a crazy. I did not pick that up.
Okay,
and it's a concept that's very cool.
It is.
Now I'm thinking about it.
And obviously, there have been other movies and other books and other stories about this, like when people know that they're going to die. And I personally think it's like very interesting. And like, how do you act differently? You know, if you think that you're going to die on this day or doing this thing, like how do you act differently in that moment? Mm-hmm. But do you get to live your life better? Like not having any fear. Like if you truly, truly believe that you're not going to die until you're in this situation, then every other situation, he's just like, yeah, it's cool. Like I'll be fine.
I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, dude, like.
So that's what I got out of that story. What I didn't understand was the very end. So like he has a kid.
Okay.
And when he finally does die, the two guys that he works with go to his house. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't really understand. So like the young kid who's also named David, there were like 3 Davids in this story. That was a little confusing because there was like the David and the Goliath thing.
Yeah, with the ship. Yeah.
So they go into the house and like the son, they say he's going to be an architect and he's showing a lot of promise. And then they go in the house and like the kid sees Jimmy and he's like, oh my gosh, you know, like he just like looks shocked. So like he looks familiar or something. And then it was like, and then young David did not become an architect. So, like, I didn't get that part of it. Also, it doesn't, like, blatantly say that his dream came true, but that was just kind of what I got from it. So that was what didn't make sense. Like, the very, very ending, like, the last, like,
well, I think
3 sentences of that story didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Is Clarke loves those endings that's like one sentence kind of changes everything you read, or just or affirms something that was only ever hinted at.
Yeah.
And
so what did you get at? So if you didn't think that at all, like, what did you think?
I didn't. I got almost none of what you said, but you saying it makes me think that you're right. Dude,
okay.
I'm embarrassed by the note that I wrote about this story. No, and it's honestly, it's great. Like I'm grateful that you're on the show right now, explaining this so well, because like this is why I need co-hosts.
Yeah.
Because the note I wrote is story about scientists who inherit their interest in spaceflight from dreams ? And then I wrote, not really sure about this one.
But but I do feel like there is something going on with the kid, with the young, like he have a dream that Jimmy was in it?
Well, what's the title of the story?
Well, right. It's inheritance.
So I'm just assuming that whatever power Jimmy has to see, or the main character to see his death, I would just assume that the son also has it and saw something.
Right. And
maybe
it involved this guy, Jimmy, because he looked really familiar to him.
Maybe they have the same premonition.
Maybe.
You know? So to see those characters, those people.
Right.
I mean, I don't
Maybe
know.
he didn't die in the way that his dream was. But I also think, like, it's interesting because the 2 guys that he works with, they say that, like, David's confidence kind of rubs off on them. So, you know, I just think that it's interesting, like, but like I said, I've read, like, not that long ago, I read a book called The Immortalists, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And it's about these 4 kids who go see this woman and she tells them when they're going to die.
Okay.
So the book is all about that idea of, like, how do you live your life if you know when you're going to die? And even if, so let's say that someone tells you when you're going to die. Let's say, like, I say to you, okay, you're going to die on this day, you know, the exact date.
Mm-hmm.
How, whether or not that's true, how differently do you act on that date if it's already in your head that you're going to die? You know, so I think that's a really interesting concept, and maybe that's why I thought about it.
Yeah.
Because I not that long ago, maybe a couple years ago, read a book all about it.
Well, I've thought about what you're saying, but never with the idea that, okay, if I know I'm going to die from a specific way,
yeah,
then if I'm doing anything else, like, I have the utmost confidence.
Exactly.
I've never applied that, like, spin to it.
Right. And, like, would David have not been so confident going on these test flights, these things that he was doing, had every time he went up there, he gone, oh, I might die.
Right.
But if you know, or, like, you truly, truly believe that you're going to make it through,
mm-hmm.
How do you approach things differently?
I mean, it's almost like now we're getting into, like, time travel and, like, fate and destiny. No, because, well, it's like, but I guess if you know your future, you know what I mean, then
right. But I guess that's also what I'm saying is the whole idea of. So, I mean, it doesn't apply as much to this story, I guess, because if you think that you're going to die doing a certain thing or on a certain day, do you act reckless on that day? That maybe you wouldn't have died, but you have it already in your head. Well, I'm going to die today anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If he was like, well, I'm going to die, like if he got into the ship or whatever and was like, oh, this is the one,
right? Because
this is what I saw in my dream, then how differently do you act? So it's not necessarily fate.
Right.
It's like human operation of, like, I don't care because I don't think I'm going to make it through this. So
mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter
or you almost wonder, like,
what I do.
Yeah. It's almost like, do you lean into it and act in a dangerous way that will probably get you killed, or you try to avoid it?
Exactly. It's like the whole idea of like a placebo too. Like you think you're going to act a certain way, so you act a certain way.
True.
But like, you know, it's just, so in that sense, it has nothing to do with anything like magical.
Right.
You know, it's more just about human behavior and how we would act differently thinking we were going to die, and how we would act differently not thinking, you know, that we were going to die.
Right. And I think I've said this before on the podcast. It's like that is why science fiction is so important, is that it removes you from the situation to then in turn give you a different perspective on reality.
Right.
Like real situations and human nature.
Which, you know, with this story, like, yes, it has to do with like a dream and a premonition, but that's like a real thing. Like people have dreams and think that, you know, they know what's going to happen. Like, so technically the story Inheritance could be 100% like real life.
Yeah. No sci-fi.
Right.
Minus
because
spaceships or whatever.
Well,
but,
exactly.
Yeah.
But, you know, you could say it to anything. They could be like a test pilot in like an airplane, you know.
True.
I mean, you could just say, I'm going to do, this is not how I'm going to die. It's like that movie Big Fish. Like he does all these crazy things and everyone's like, oh, it's dangerous. And he's like, this isn't how I die. So, you know, it's just like, how would you live differently? But that, and then, like I said, acting a certain way in a certain situation or on a certain day that has nothing to do with fate and destiny and magic and seeing the future.
Yeah.
But just your reaction to thinking that you're going. I mean, it's how we act in a dangerous situation anyway. Like we get in our cars and go places every single day.
Yeah.
We don't think anything of it, but we could get hit by a car.
True.
And yet we go and do other things that are dangerous and act differently.
I get what you're
so
saying.
Anyway, I mean, that was what I got out of that story. And so I thought that story was kind of cool. I did still, again, I read it more as like educational.
Okay. Were there any stories that you read that you were just sucked in, like you just for the same reasons you read books anyway?
Well, I don't know. I feel like a lot of these stories, like there's kind of a moment for me of like realization.
Okay.
Like so one of the ones that I thought was cool was History Lesson. Do you remember that one?
Yep.
So, and they're called Venusians, I think. Is that how we say that? Venusians, people from Venus.
That was, because that came up in our earlier episode.
So that one was cool to me because for some reason, when I was reading it in the beginning, I was like picturing people a long time ago, which then you find out like that's not what it was, which I mean, maybe it said that in the beginning and I just didn't notice what was going on. And then you realize that Venusians, which are reptiles, which I thought was cool, have found kind of like a time capsule sort of a thing.
Right.
And they're like learning about humans and they're like, whoa, they're so weird. And
because the idea is that humans are like extinct.
Right. And so, and I also think it's kind of funny how like they do say in a couple spots in that story, like, humans should have been able to survive this. Like they're like, it's like kind of a dig. Like these people are smart enough and advanced enough that like, because there's an ice age.
Yes.
So that's what kills everybody. But it's like, they're kind of like, they should have been able to figure this out. And I feel like part of me is like, you know, okay, come on, guys. Like, let's stop ruining our planet. We're smart enough.
Yeah.
We're advanced enough. You know, years from now, other races on other planets are going to be like, what is wrong? What was wrong with these stupid people? But so I did like this one. And I thought it was really cool. Like there's a description of humans, like in one part, like, I don't know if it's okay if I read this, but it says the dominant type of life appears to have been a 2-armed biped. It walked upright and, I love this, covered its body with some flexible material, possibly for protection against the cold, since even before the Ice Age, the planet was at a much lower temperature than our own world. So I love that, like clothes, some sort of flexible material, because obviously reptiles aren't wearing clothing. So then it goes on. So they find a movie. Is it a movie?
It's a film reel.
Right, but is it an actual movie or is it just
This is why I don't love this story, because I don't fully I appreciate the punchline at the end, but I don't fully understand it.
Well, yeah.
Like, what are they watching?
So I guess that's what I was trying to figure out, because I was like, is it a movie?
But
like an actual film, or is it just like footage of humans? And then they talk about like
Well, it's funnier if they're not looking at humans. It's funnier if they're like, I kind of pictured that they're watching like a cartoon, like they're watching Mickey Mouse or something.
Okay.
And so they assume humans are Mickey Mouse.
I bet you're right, because well, there's this one part where they say that like it says like there was an incredibly violent conflict. It says the scientists watch spellbound as the strange beings become involved in a series of fantastic adventures. This is about the movie that they're watching. There was an incredibly violent conflict with another. I bet you're right.
I bet it's a specific movie.
That's what I was trying to figure out, because I thought it was like a movie with real people. And I was like, a violent conflict with something that's similar but not the same. I was like, what is that?
Could have been like, let's just say, like, if you're listening, you don't understand. The punchline at the end is that it's a Walt Disney production.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
So,
I was like,
okay. So, but they do say too that in the video they drive across a really long distance.
Yeah.
So, okay, you also have to understand that this story was written was written in 1949. So, like, what Disney movies are available to us at this time? It's like, when was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang written?
I'm sure we could probably figure this out.
Yeah,
because they drive over miles of country in a 4-wheeled mechanical device, which was capable of extraordinary feats of locomotion. The ride ended in a city packed with other vehicles moving in all directions at breathtaking speeds. No one was surprised to see 2 of the machines meet head-on with devastating results. I bet you're right. I bet it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
That's the impression I get. Because it's funnier.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like a funnier concept to have aliens studying Earth, watching some cartoon, thinking that the cartoon characters are what we are. You know what I mean? Like, that's just funnier.
Yeah, I didn't even get that. It's interesting, too, that it's like a historian. Is a historian really who would do that? It seems like it would be a scientist, or like...
Do what?
Study other people on other planets.
Aren't they like a group, like watching it together? Or is it one person?
Well, no, there's like it says... It keeps just saying the historian.
Oh, okay.
It's like a guy leading the discussion, showing it to them.
Oh, okay.
And they're just like laying on the beach, I feel like, because they're reptiles. Because I was like, oh, wait, they're reptiles.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind I mean, they kind of hint at that, and then they say something about they're actually reptiles.
Well, the thing, Venus is often described in fiction as a greenhouse planet, like a planet that's wet and has a lot of plants. So I think that's why people normally envision Venusians to be like reptiles or amphibians.
Huh. That's cool. And then the other... Oh, go ahead.
Venus is also covered by clouds. So we've never seen with the naked eye what the surface looks like.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting what we're talking about, all this science fiction. And so it's all made up, you know, I mean, it's not all made up, but it's a lot of just like going with it. Okay, this thing, and then we're going to make a story up.
Yeah.
That you start to forget that it's like real, that there's like, you start to forget that like, this is going to sound so stupid, but like planets are a real thing and we're actually studying them. And we, you know, I just feel like when you're talking about all this science fiction, just like making things up and it's all really crazy and, isn't really happening, you kind of start to forget that like this is actual like stuff, and this is based on real
and from
stuff.
From Clarke is where you get that as real as you could be from our perspective, and then more so from our perspective from the 50s.
I feel like Clarke makes me feel lazy, like he was just writing all these books and short stories, and he was obviously very smart.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so the other one that I read was Loophole.
Okay. Which
again, I was like a little bit like, what's going on here? But it's like, again, Martians. So it's not humans. It's not humans on Earth. It's Martians.
I love the story. I just had to look at my notes to remember which one it was. I love this one.
They are... So... They're basically like telling humans to stay on Earth. They're like, you guys just stay there. Just don't go anywhere. You don't have the tools, the means of transportation.
Like your race is just not ready.
Right, which I think is funny. And I also...
But
go ahead.
It's important to say they specifically say, do not build any more rockets.
Yeah.
That's specifically what they say, because that leads to the ending, the punchline at the end.
What's the punchline? I don't remember.
So or if you just want to keep describing it, maybe I'll...
No. You can describe it, because I was going to say something else.
So the story, Martians essentially say to Earth, you're not allowed to build rockets. So Earth instead develops, because Martians don't want Earthlings to come to Mars.
Right.
So they say stop building rockets, because rockets are how, at the time, we were attempting to get to space. So in the end, so humans do that. They listen to the Martians.
Yeah.
So you think the Martians are getting what they want, but instead of developing rockets, humans develop teleportation.
Oh, jeez.
And teleport to Mars instead, and then kill all the Martians. And then the punchline, what's funny about the story is, and at the end, the humans say, okay, well, now that they're gone, we can get back to building rockets.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't get that. But I think one of the things, and I know we've talked about this before, is just to think about, like, if there is other life out there, and I always say that if there really are Martians or, whatever, that if they could see us and see, like, our pop culture depictions of them, they're probably just just leave those idiots alone.
Yeah.
Like, they think we are real smart,
real
scary, have way better technology than them.
Yeah.
So they're like, let's just let them, like, I just imagine that would be the way that aliens or other life forms would think of us. And I feel like this kind of like had a little bit of that too. Like, we're just going to let you keep thinking, whether they are all of those things or not.
Right. Well, I imagine them as like almost like equal to us and equally afraid of us. But thinking, well, better just let them think we're scary so that they don't come fuck with us.
Exactly. Like, you have to think about that. Like, if you had that upper hand of like, okay, I mean, and yes, like in a lot of the movies and, like I said, pop culture, like, we overcome aliens, but it's, I feel like if you had that upper hand of like, okay, these people really think we're smart and scary and really powerful, let's just let them keep thinking that. Like, I love to think that.
It's a cool concept, and I feel like it's been done. I'm trying to think of a cool example. There must be one where somebody assumes something and another character just lets them assume that because it's to their benefit.
Well, it's kind of like Captain Shakespeare in Stardust.
Yes.
It's exactly like that. Like, he is not that.
He's not bloodthirsty.
Right. But he lets everybody think he is because it keeps him safe.
Yeah. There's that line too. He's like, he's like, why do you think I call myself Shakespeare?
Yeah.
He's like, it's for the poet, but they
Right.
think it's for,
Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like that. I'm sure there's other
There's got to be other
examples of it, but
it's a cool like dynamic between characters. I think I'm agreeing with you.
So I know like we've talked about that whole concept before of like what might aliens think of us.
What do you think Martians would be most offended by based on our depictions of them? I can think of what I would say.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we certainly make a lot of assumptions, so they might just be offended by that.
Just the assumptions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have necessarily like a specific example.
I have one here. I'll show you.
Okay, what? But I do think like, I mean, it's like assuming that well, I don't know what they look like, but in history lesson, like they're reptiles. Like, I don't know if they look like the reptiles that we have here, but that's not ever how we really make aliens look. So
Reptilian?
They might not look
reptilian.
Yeah, but I get the feeling from this that they look more like a reptile that's like lays on the ground. You know, like they say that they're sunning themselves and stuff. So I imagine more of like a lizard.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's like never what we make them look like. We make them look like us. They stand up.
True. I mean, well, Clarke has a way of he often like describes aliens as what you wouldn't expect. Like one of his newest novels, it's called The Songs of Distant Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about humanity leaving Earth because Earth is being destroyed or whatever and finding a new planet. And it's like mostly covered in ocean.
Okay.
And the intelligent dominant species on this planet are like, they're as intelligent as humans, but they're straight up crabs.
Oh, God.
They're big, like as big as humans, but like they are shaped like crabs. Like they're crabs, but they're like as smart as we are.
Yeah. So, I mean, we make a lot of assumptions even just about like what they look like.
This is what I think Martians
and
would
we
be
always
most
think that they're
offended
green.
by.
Oh, oh yeah. Mars attacks.
Yeah.
Aren't those Martians like real mean?
Yeah, they're evil.
Yeah.
And they're like whack whack whack.
Oh gosh.
Like the Martians would be like, "Are you guys for real?" We are able to speak.
But also, like, they might speak and we wouldn't understand it. It's like
most likely not. Yeah.
But that's how we are, you know. If someone's not speaking the same language as us, we're like, oh God, just learn English.
I know.
You know, like we'd be like, oh God, just learn our language. Well, what language? What language do you want them to learn? There's a lot of different languages on Earth.
Well, that's like, that's the thing. Like, I just think we would. Even if we didn't try to kill them, I feel like humans would be so hostile towards aliens. Like, think about how we treat each other who are just slightly different.
Yeah, well,
it's like what you just said.
afraid.
Like, speak English. Like, your own species, like, just because they're from another country, they're in America or whatever, they're, like, not speaking your language, and you get angry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we would just be really scared. I think that there would be a lot of people in the world who would be like, this is really cool. This is like everything. I feel like had Arthur C. Clarke like met aliens, he would be like, this is great.
Oh yeah.
But I'm sure there would be a lot of people who are just really scared. And I do feel like, I mean, we would probably have conflicts because who's more powerful? Like who has a right to, you know, what but it's like, you know, in Captain Marvel, you know, when like there's like her friend's little girl, like remember they go up to the ship and they find all those aliens. I don't remember what they're called.
Yes.
And they're like families. They're like kids.
Yeah.
And then it shows them like back at her friend's house and like the alien girl is like playing with the human girl.
Right.
Like, you know, I feel like, yes, if like kids met aliens, they'd probably just be like, oh, okay, you know, they don't see differences necessarily the way that we do. Like that could be a good thing. But because we're, you know, we have all these ideas and like fears about things, you know, it would probably not be
It's funny
good.
Because the story we just talked about in episodes 4 and 5 was Childhood's End, and it's about a benevolent alien invasion. So basically aliens come to Earth and they're nice and they want to help us. But when they first show themselves to us,
Yeah.
he like lands his ship, and the whole world knows that this is the day that they're going to reveal themselves. And he asks for 2 children to come on the ship,
Yeah.
and come out with him.
Mm-hmm.
So he walks out, and he has wings. This alien has big wings.
Yep.
And the 2 kids are sitting on his shoulders, I believe.
Yeah.
And before he's even come out of the ship, the kids are already, like, it's described as he walks out, the kid is like fiddling with his wings,
Yeah.
like playing with the wings.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's just a very childlike,
Right.
just like, I'm interested in this. I'm not necessarily afraid of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that's the problem. Like we don't understand
Yeah.
things, and that scares us. And you know, we probably just have like a natural reaction to protect ourselves from
Right.
something.
I also think that we are trained as humans, not intentionally, but like that life is hard
Yeah.
and change is often hard.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of adults or just people like routine. And
Yeah.
so when things change, it just means, well, this is just going to make my life more difficult. So when you
Right.
see like aliens, it's like, whoa, that is a big change.
Right.
And I can only
Right.
see problems.
Well, I feel like it would also depend very much on like how they like approached, if they approached us,
Right.
because you know, you have a lot of movies where like the aliens just like attack,
Right.
and like maybe that's something that they'd be upset about. Like, why are we assuming that? Like, why don't we assume that they would be peaceful?
I mean, I don't know. But
Because it makes for a better movie.
True, but at the same time, like there's nothing to compare it. Like there's nothing to compare it to.
Exactly.
Like we don't know how they would depict
Exactly.
aliens. You know what I mean? Like
I
who
do
knows?
think it's like crazy. It is weird to think that we're like the only life form.
I can't imagine that we are.
I don't think that we are either.
I think it's like a mathematical impossibility. They say,
Yeah.
but
So there's got to be something.
but at the same time, I firmly believe that. Well, maybe not firmly. I personally don't think that if we ever meet aliens, that they will represent, that they will be anything even remotely similar to any way that we've ever depicted them.
I'm sure that they
You
won't.
know what I mean?
We're also assuming that we would even be able to like communicate with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if there is a life form that's more like dogs or something, you know, like animals
Right.
that we can't communicate. Like, we're very much assuming that like they would have a language and
Yeah.
that we would somehow be able to
Yeah.
figure that out.
And I think, even though I do not love the movie Arrival,
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate how like that whole movie is about, or at least like the major conflict in that movie is really the very first thing that you would have to do if you encountered an alien race, which was figure out how to communicate.
Right.
And like you were saying, like I feel like usually in movies it's like some kind of excuse, like it's like easy
Yeah.
to somehow figure that out. But it's like the whole movie is about, look, like, okay, aliens come down, but you can't communicate with them.
Right.
You need to figure that out, and it
Right.
would be extremely difficult.
Well, and you need to figure out how to communicate with them before like somebody gets freaked out and
Yeah.
there's like
Pulls a trigger.
violence or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is already life and we just don't know about it yet.
Yeah. Well, and again,
So, maybe somebody knows about it.
The one other thing too that I love in Arrival is that it's what you just said. It's like we don't even know if we will be able to communicate, because even before communicating, even before like verbal communication or language,
Yeah.
you most likely would have to rearrange the way you think.
Right. Right.
Because that's
yeah.
like the whole point of Arrival is that, you know, we think in a straight line.
Right.
They think in a circle. So, you know, like even just switching languages, people say like whatever language you speak is the way that you like interact with the world.
Right.
Like you can only think about the world in your own language.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm saying is even on Earth, there's like thousands of languages. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to go to another planet, it's like not just language. It's like the whole thought process, I would assume, would be different.
I mean, maybe humans just are not ready to meet.
I doubt it. Yeah.
To me,
but then again, like,
it's
what
cool
does
to
that
think
even,
about?
like, how, like, what if we're not ready now? Like, what does ready look like? Like, who knows?
Yeah, it's probably going to end up like this story. There's like, millions of years from now, they're going to find reptiles on Venus are going to be like, oh, so Earth used to have people on it.
Yeah. Hopefully they still have iguanas.
Well, yeah. Could you imagine if they
pets.
watched a movie that had like a lizard in it or something? They'd be like,
Yeah.
there we are.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they
Distant
look like,
cousins, right.
but they'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope we are burying things. But that is interesting. Like, I wonder if that is a cartoon that they watch in that. Because it does sound a little crazy and like a violent encounter.
And I almost assume, dude, you got to assume that if you were living in the time when it was written, you would probably more understand whatever thing he's referencing, maybe.
There weren't thousands and thousands of movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there are now.
Yeah. So, all right. So to end this, I just want to talk to you about like first time ever reading Arthur C. Clarke.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, I sympathize with what you said about short stories. I do not prefer short stories over novels. It's just not really my style. Like, for instance, Neil Gaiman. I've read every book by him. One of my favorite authors of all time.
Yeah.
I've never read any of his collections of short stories.
But you used to have one because I borrowed it from you.
Even more to the point, I owned it and I still didn't read it.
I mean, I'm very much the kind of person that will not, like, never say never. Like, when it comes to music, when it comes to movies, when it comes to stories and novels and, like, I do feel like I kind of look at things just like as themselves. Like, I will look at a story and say, and not judge it based on, like, anything else. Okay. Like, I'll kind of just like, or a movie or whatever, a song, I don't know. Like, I'll look at it and just say, like, okay, did I enjoy this? And sort of like the experience of watching it, reading it, whatever that may be. So while I'm not a huge fan of like short stories, it's not my like chosen, way to read. I would rather read a novel.
Yeah.
But I do like, that just with some of these and with other short stories, like there can be little things that will really stick with you, like sometimes more than novels.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
of the brevity.
Yes. And I do think that like, and it's kind of, so I just read a collection of short stories for my book group, and it was literally the exact same thing. Like, there were some of them that really stuck with me and with the other people in my book group, and then there were other stories that I feel like when we went to discuss them, we were like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
So you kind of do.
That's how it was for me with Inheritance. It just didn't connect with me.
Which is interesting because I kind of got something really different out of it. Yeah. But so I'd probably have to say, like, okay, what do I think of Arthur C. Clarke? I would have to read a novel. But that being said, like,
breaking.
These were interesting to me. They weren't boring to read.
But even I think maybe just even more specifically, like, I think you could look at Breaking Strain, because even though it's shorter than like a novella, it's certainly longer than most short stories.
Right.
That certainly had some meat to it.
Yes.
Do you think that was maybe the best one, or?
Well, like I said, I was a little bit. I feel like I'm going to just sound like an idiot on this podcast.
You don't sound stupid at all.
I feel like I was a little bit confused by it, but also, like I said, I feel like that was part of the point.
Oh yeah.
I did also think that, like, to me, that that story kind of had a good visual to it. Like, I could kind of picture it as a movie or something. The description of like the body floating out of the thing. Yep. And like, I was just kind of imagining them in the spaceship. But again, I if I hadn't been reading that story to talk about it, I'm not sure.
Probably
like I
forgotten.
kind of would have read it and just been like, well, no, that's actually not true, because I do feel like there was definitely like a part in the story where I had to physically like stop and go back and look at it.
Okay.
And it's because of that part where you see something happen. You see, now I'm still
floating.
where you see Grant poison McNeil.
Yep.
And then he says, like, I don't want to watch him die. So he leaves,
Yeah.
which is like super cowardly. Like, I want to kill him, but I don't want to watch him die. So he leaves, and then you see the body float out. So you make an assumption, which I think is very deliberate.
Oh, yeah.
You make an assumption, but then you're like, actually, this may not work as well. No, I guess it would still work. So you see that McNeil is getting off of is the one that they rescue.
Yep.
So it was kind of at that moment that I was like, oh, McNeil isn't the one that died.
Yeah.
And then obviously they explain it, but I sort of had to go back and like make sure I was like had them right from the beginning. Like had the guy. The reason I was like sort of hesitating there is because I was thinking that if you were watching this as a movie or something,
Yeah.
like how would it be different to physically, like there would be I would never have thought I got them mixed up because I would physically be able to like see two different actors. So
Yeah,
I'm saying like when he got off the ship, I wouldn't have been like, did I get this wrong?
No, I think the way to fix that would be to just have them both be in suits so that you couldn't tell who either one was.
Yeah.
Because the dead body is not in a suit. He specifically mentions. So in the movie, you just probably stick them both in suits so you can't tell. I also pictured it shot. Like, I visually see things in books sometimes, like how it would be in a movie.
So do I.
I imagined that shot being from pretty far away, too.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Yeah.
Like maybe all one shot, just slowly
But
the two bodies emerging.
But even if it wasn't, but I don't think you would know. I don't think I realized anything was amiss until they said that, until the people saw McNeil.
Well, yeah, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
So you could, if it was a movie, you would show him poisoning him.
Right.
And then maybe like narration or something of like, okay, maybe I made the drink too hot. Like, I don't want to see this dude die. And then next shot, you would have a shot of the guy sipping whatever you assume is the poison.
Right.
The next shot would be outside.
Right.
So you'd be like, clearly the one not moving is dead McNeil.
Yeah.
And then you would cut back to inside the ship. Maybe you'd show McNeil.
Right. Well, yeah, but yes, exactly.
I guess I was saying, like, I think it's intentional that you're not supposed to.
No, I think it's intentional too. I think that I liked that. It's just, maybe I don't trust myself enough.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was like, hold on. But then I feel like I sort of went back to like the beginning of it, and I was like, okay, let's get an idea of like McNeil and Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, you only get a sense of McNeil through Grant.
Yeah.
Through a person who doesn't like him.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
I separated them because I like McNeil was the drinker. That's because the first thing he does is start boozing when they find out.
I know, and kind of like loses it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that shouldn't make him.
I loved
bad.
Grant. I just loved Grant's attitude too. He was like, "Fucking get your shit together, dude."
I
like
know.
we're also like we're not even sure yet if we're both gonna die. Like we could figure this out. Like quit crying and drinking.
Yeah, but then he says something at one point. He's like, well, I mean, he did recover. Like he did just like lose it a little bit, and then he was like, fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's one of those situations. I do feel like there's a lot of like, what would you do if you were in this situation? And that's actually makes for very good discussion, I think. Like when you're talking about science fiction, there's a lot of like life or death situations.
Yeah.
And, you have to like think about it. Like if you were on a ship and only one of you could survive, what would you do? If you were in Prospect, if you if this guy came along and killed your dad, like, would you trust him or would you kill him? Like, there's a lot of just it like I said, it makes for good discussion because you can kind of say like, well, what would you do if that happened?
Yeah.
Which is,
I agree.
I mean, you may never know, but it's sort of interesting to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, that's why I love sci-fi. I think that's why a lot of people love sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, because we just don't know. So you can kind of.
Yeah. Because like if it's just a movie about people usually end up in situations that you have also ended up in some form or another. So you're like, well, it's like that time I did that thing, but I've never been on another planet with, you know what I mean? Like, it's fun to put yourself there. Yeah.
And it's a lot of like, I mean, I think in terms of stories, people like adventure, and anytime you go to another planet or just on a spaceship or whatever, like that's an adventure, I mean, it's all, and because it's just crazy. Like, it's just cool to think about space travel in general. Like, I think I've said this before, just the fact that people were like, let's try to go up there is just really cool.
It's one of the coolest things people have ever done, in my opinion.
Well, and it's like that whole idea that like something's only impossible until like you do it.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that there was a time when people were like, we can't go to space. Like, no way.
Like within 100 years, probably.
Yeah.
Majority of people thought, no way.
Someone was like, well, maybe we can.
Yeah, what if we try it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. It's all very interesting, like going to space. And I think because it's like something that I have we talked about this in the last one, like I have no desire to do it. Like I find it very interesting because I'm like, it's not something.
My realm.
Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting for me to think about like the kind of person that would want to do that. I think that's really, really cool.
Space dreamers.
Yeah.
That's who want to do it.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so far, based on what you've read, does Arthur C. Clarke get the Heather seal of approval?
Yeah.
Cool.
No, he definitely does. I'm sure there are probably things that I wouldn't, like even hearing you talk about some of the other books, like I feel like, and please, correct me if this is not what you're saying, but it sounds like in some of his books, like not a whole lot happens. It's just a lot of like, explanation of like things, which is so cool. Like like, it's very cool that he did that. He's like, I'm really into this. So I'm going to, explore it in this way. But I do feel like some of his books, some of his stories, I may end up reading them and just being like, I don't get this. I can't picture this.
Yeah.
And if there's not like a story or an idea kind of like moving it forward, I probably would not like that.
Yeah. Or even remember it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, some of these stories I would not pick up on things.
Yeah.
So then I would maybe miss the point of it. Like maybe but I do, it's like you said earlier, like talking about them, they make for good discussion because
Absolutely.
I think that just as an example, there was a story that like I got something out of that you had never, gotten before. So you went, oh,
especially Inheritance.
That's cool. Right.
I totally appreciate what you had to say about it.
Well, and then in the history lesson one, like the fact that you were like, oh, I got the idea that it was a cartoon. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, yes. I mean, in general, I was an English major in college. I love to read. I love discussion. So they make good for that. Like I love, reading books, watching movies, and then hearing somebody else's perspective on it. Like, and just to go back to our last episode, do I have a greater appreciation for Solaris after talking about it? Absolutely.
Perfect.
Like, absolutely. Would I say that I like enjoy that movie and want to watch it again? No.
Yeah.
But did I get a different perspective on it from talking about it?
Yeah.
yes. Like, I would say I even appreciated Prospect a little bit more after talking about it.
Yeah, me too.
Because there were things like I didn't notice when I watched it, or things that like, even as simple as, I knew who Pedro Pascal was like going into it. So, I kind of maybe brought other things, but like to hear you be like, I didn't really know about him before then. And like, this is a cool performance. It's even something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Like hearing someone else's take on an actor.
And like, that's why,
something.
Yeah, I think that's why I like to talk about movies on this podcast too, is because if a listener has seen the movie, you would just want to hear other perspectives. You know what I mean?
It's funny because like listening to some of the other episodes, it's almost like not frustrating, but it's almost like, you'll hear, like I'll hear you and Amy talking about something and I'll be like, wait, I want to say something about that. Or, but you can't. But I mean, that's not to say that there are not means of like me saying that to you. I could hear it and say, or a listener who doesn't personally know you could like say on Instagram, like, hey,
or just,
I thought this about that.
Or even better, like if you hear our discussion about Prospect and you're like, that sounds interesting, then you and a friend can go watch Prospect and have your own discussion about it. You know what I mean? Like, I think, I don't know. So this will be like a precursor to the next episode you're going to be on, and I won't say for sure because we know things change. So the next one that I have you scheduled for would be A Fall of Moondust, which is a novel. Right. And I chose A Fall of Moondust for you because it is one of the Clarke stories where it has a very distinct plot / conflict. Okay. It's not like you're like just traveling through space and explaining how that would work. It's an adventure. It's like an accident happens and people have to get themselves out of a bad situation type thing. People have to like get saved. Right. So it's not like, the boring stuff. So I'll be very, very curious to hear what you think about that. Yeah. I was curious anyway, and now after this conversation, I'm even more curious.
Well, and I've said this before, like I like a good story. So I don't really care where it's set. I don't care if it's a Western, if it's a sci-fi, if it's a mixture of the two, if it's, if it's funny, if it's sad, as long as it's like a good story that kind of keeps me going. Yeah. I don't really care like what genre or like where it's set or whatever. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the cool things about storytelling is that you can take any setting, any situation, but as long as you have like a good story, everything else like doesn't really matter.
Or it would be fun to take someone like Dad who likes Westerns. Yeah. And show him Prospect.
I think Dad would get a little too caught up. I think there are definitely people who would get like a little bit caught up in like what's strange about that. Yeah.
But at the same, I think Dad would be like just someone who like
no, I know what you mean.
Someone who would say, I don't like science fiction, but I like Westerns. Right. To show them Prospect. You have to assume they would like it more than your normal sci-fi. You know what I mean?
Well, and there would be no reason for them to not like that movie to me is more Western.
Oh, yeah.
That happens to be set in a science fiction. Yeah. And yes, there's like weird looking things in it, but like you have to set aside, there's things about that movie that I just didn't understand, but I didn't have whatever. Like I didn't really care. But there might be people who would like get caught up in that.
Yeah. I mean, it's an alien world. You can't expect to understand everything. Even though it's made by humans, it's like, there's going to be some things that aren't going to make sense.
Yeah. Well, and like, even there were like little technical things that like, I was like, all that dust that was like floating around. Yeah. I was like, I bet that's just like an effect they put on the movie afterwards. Oh, yeah. Like, you just find yourself kind of like thinking about things. Because I was like, what is that? And then I was like, it's just obviously like.
It's just a filter.
And then I'm like, oh, they probably just like, that was probably just a click of a button.
Yeah. And you can tell that they're just in like, they're in just like, it looks like Pacific Northwest or something.
Absolutely.
And you kind of just like put this, like mess with the saturation and all of a sudden it looks like an alien planet. Dude, it's like,
but that is what's weird.
Well, it's like, remember when I drove all the way to Colorado to make a science fiction short
Yeah.
film, and I get back and I show it to people, and they're like, I don't get it. Like, why are you in Colorado? I'm like, dude, it's supposed to be an alien planet, because I didn't have the budget to
but
because I didn't know what I was doing.
That is interesting, though. You can make a science fiction movie, and like to a certain extent, you can either do it 100% like on a sound stage with a green screen,
Right.
or you can just go somewhere. And you're right. I thought of like Pacific Northwest too.
Yeah.
And it's like, think about Star Wars. Remember there's like a scene that they did in like the Muir Woods. Like, I don't remember what it is, but I remember when I was there, like in the redwoods, someone was like, "Oh, and they filmed a
when they're
scene
zooming
from
on
yeah."
the little,
So it's kind of like you just have to make a decision sometimes. Like, this is where this is gonna take place, and even though it looks like Earth, because you definitely think that watching the movie. I don't think it takes away from it at all.
Yeah.
But I think that as you're watching the movie, you're like, "Huh, this is." I mean. Yes, it's an alien world or whatever you want to call it. It was a moon.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like not on Earth. But again, that's just a decision like you have to make when you're making a movie. It can either be completely CGI and look super weird.
Oh, yeah.
Or it can just be Earth.
Wait, didn't they... I like how they referred to the planet. Didn't, like, the prospectors called it, like, the green...
Yeah, I guess I didn't know. Is that what that was? I kept hearing them say the green.
They meant
and I
just
didn't
like
really know.
This rich forest world that has this valuable whatever it is on it. Like I just liked like the whole like their lingo. Like I think they called it, like last time I was in the green or something like that.
Okay, I didn't know if the green was like an organization.
No, I think
it's
just
it was where they were
slang for that planet.
I also liked when they in the beginning when they like got released from the freighter thing.
Yeah.
I thought that part was kind of cool because they were just like you could see it like getting higher up, and I was like, this is kind of scary.
Yeah,
and like the girl was doing like the dad was just like chewing his gum or whatever that was, and like he's like, oh, I got a problem, and the girl like did a very good job of looking a little freaked out.
Yeah, and especially I like when something went wrong. And the ship is clearly damaged. Like when I was like, I'm not even remotely surprised that guy fucked something up.
Yeah. Well, so that was something that I noticed when I was watching the movie. They were flying this spacecraft, and they had like a freaking manual to do it. Like they didn't really know how to do it. They had to read a manual.
Yeah, I mean...
But that's probably realistic. Like, would every single... Because that is something that I notice. I feel like I do notice in, like, science fiction or whatever, science fiction movies, stories. Like, people just seem to know how to do everything.
Yeah.
Like, you have to... Like, you have your thing that you're in charge of on the ship, but then also you really need to know how to, like, fly the ship. You really need to know the mechanics of the ship.
Yeah.
You really... And that's a little, you're like, really? Do they really know how to do all of this? Like, I thought it was kind of realistic that they would be like, this is too much for a person to remember.
Well,
so they need to look at a manual.
Not only that, I assume that like a lot of that stuff would be automated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he didn't even have like a window. He was like looking through that thing.
Yeah.
So I just assume, well, because on Earth now, like commercial airplanes are like mostly controlled by computers.
Yes.
Like the pilot's not up there like turning the wheel.
Right. Which I learned from, what's that book called?
Oh,
Airframe or something?
Yeah.
Airframe.
So I'm just assuming in a future where like two people can man a spaceship, I would assume it would be mostly automated.
Yeah, but isn't that part of the problem? Like, if you can let a machine do it for you.
What do you mean?
That, like, sometimes you need, like, human...
Yeah, you do.
The human thought process.
Yeah. Like, reaction, or just, yeah.
Isn't that in 2001 Space Odyssey? Isn't there, like a thing running the ship, and then it
that movie
starts making decisions.
Yeah, that's one of the central conflicts of that movie is like man versus machine, like man versus AI.
But even like in like to go back to a movie that I referenced earlier and watched recently, like in Sunshine, like that's kind of a conflict at one point. Like do they keep control of the spaceship, or do they let the automatic thing do it? Because like people are going to die if they let the automatic, But so, I mean, I guess that's just one more thing that is an issue when you start to talk about space travel, is like machines have to be able to do a lot.
Yeah.
And how much is that like a really good thing, but also maybe
especially because machines don't need like water and food and sleep. You know what I mean? Like it's better if it's automated.
Yeah.
For everyone involved.
But then there should always be the option to like override that, which
well, I mean, dude,
could be a bad thing.
I mean, these days, like we have drones. Like hopefully when we take to the stars, it's just a person like it's like Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Remember?
What?
Remember how
Which
like
one?
the little ships that are chasing them
are
controlled by drones?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's how we
And
do it.
there's that whole part in I don't remember which, Iron Man 3, I think, where like the suit, like Iron Man goes and saves all the people in the plane.
Yeah.
That part's, I really like that part. And then you realize afterwards that like Tony's not even in the suit.
Right.
So it is good.
Yeah. Because
then you're not putting like a human
exactly
in harm's way. Or there's a part in The Mandalorian, actually, where like they have stormtroopers, but they say like at one point like they are no longer have like humans. They're like machines, because that was like the one weakness of a stormtrooper. I hope I'm using the right terms here. But that was like the one weakness of the stormtroopers, was that there was like a human.
Right.
It was a human, and so they like eliminate that, and then you're like, oh yeah, these things are just going to kill everybody because there's no human having any.
No one can make decisions.
So it could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. Having mostly probably a good thing.
Yeah, unless you listen to sci-fi.
Right.
Because I feel like in every sci-fi story, it ends up being bad.
This is true.
It's very bad in 2001. And
it's very bad in like Ex Machina. It's bad.
True. Yeah. It's bad in Terminator.
Yeah.
But this is fiction. Hopefully reality is better.
Yeah. But how would we really know? Maybe that's part of the problem.
I don't know.
Is we're like, this could be a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, it'll be like aliens come to Earth when we invent the first AI. When he starts watching all our movies,
yeah,
he's going to be like, you guys are dicks. I'm very nice. Do you want a cup of tea?
Maybe, yeah. He'll be like, I'll never be mean.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You just never know.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
All right. Well, I think we should
wrap it up.
Wrap this bad boy up here. I didn't say it last episode, so I'll say it again. I'm on Instagram, The Space Streamers, at The Space Streamers. Hit me up. Follow me if you feel like it. Next week, we are talking about Earthlight. And Amy is reading the book, so I think that usually leads to a richer discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, tune in next week. The show goes live every Thursday. Yeah. That's it.
They can watch it. I mean, listen to it on
Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
Spotify. All like the major channels.
Okay.
But you're probably at one of those if you're listening to this.
Oh yeah, good call.
But yeah, no, it's good to explain things so everybody knows.
I guess they've already figured that part out.
Yeah.
My bad.
All right, and Heather will be back for most likely Fall of Moondust, but probably other ones too.
Okay.
Throughout.
Cool.
And all right, that's it.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening.
This has been a Sue Madre production. See you next time.